Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I'm joined today, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, my business partner, the whiskey wizard himself, the dear Jason Neil Johnston Yellen.
Yakandanda, mate.
Wow. I don't know if you've just upset everybody in Australia right now. You think you did?
I wondered about that. I did. I wondered about that. I thought, should I do this? And I thought, those people of Australia who are now going out and about doing their business in a post-pandemic world, I thought they can handle this. They've clearly handled everything else thrown at them.
You think throwing, muttering words such as mate and Barbies and shrimp, you think that's just pandering? You think that's it's pandering to the Australians and
pandering to upset them?
Obviously, today's guest is the one and only, and back for a second time, Dave Broom. But
he is.
We came out the gate throwing Australia around here. Just
indeed.
Willy-nilly.
Indeed.
Seemingly.
Nothing we do is willy-nilly, Joshua. Everything we do is carefully planned, just down to the minutia. Mm-hmm. And so we've been sitting on a bottle that we acquired from a previous guest of ours.
We have been, and it's been painful sitting on this bottle. Because we've had it for a few weeks, and that hurts the derriere.
Yep. God.
I was not that kind
of. No matter how often we do this, I did not see that coming.
How did you not see that coming? How did you?
And here we are. And so yes, our good friend Lee Atwood of the Backwoods Distilling Company. In, as I led off the episode, Yakandanda.
Yakandanda.
It's such a great... I have seriously looked at moving to Yakandanda so that I can say I live in Yakandanda. It's an amazing word.
It's a great word, but
spectacular.
It sounds like a word you would say while drunk. Like it sounds like a word you're trying to say something else. Kind of like Inagata Devita was meant to be in the Garden of Eden, but the singer was so drunk, all he could say was Inagata Devita, right? So it makes me wonder if Yakandanda actually was something else, but the town drunk said it a certain way, and that's how it's been ever since.
My guess is it probably comes from the Aborigine, and so now you've offended all those Aborigines who listen to One Nation Under Whiskey.
Oh, my gosh.
So, yeah, you drunk Aborigines unable to speak English as Joshua speaks.
They should be happy they don't speak it like I speak it. And the reason that we're bringing up Lee Atwood and Backwoods Distilling Company is twofold. A, he just put out in Instagram and other social media places that he's officially left his career of teaching.
Indeed.
Australia's youths to now creating whiskey for Australia's youths to eventually be drinking. So he is a full-time distiller now.
It's remarkable, and definitely cheers to him on that one.
And we're toasting to Lee with his own whiskey. He sent us a bottle of his rye whiskey, batch number 1, matured exclusively in Shiraz wine barrique. I assume it's a barrique.
And we just opened these bottles at the start of this episode. I'm tasting this literally for the first time. It's just got this wonderful baking chocolate note to it. It's actually interesting. It's not just baking chocolate. There's a milk chocolate meets baking chocolate. Couple of notes happening in here.
Oh, wow.
That's nice. First things first, I looked at the glass. Great oils building on the edge of the glass. We're sitting here at 46% alcohol. Great accessible entry strength on it. Really, that 46 for me really tamps down the rye spice as well. And I've got the chocolatey quality. Obviously, we've got the Shiraz, that influence of the grape in here as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I first poured it, I did get a little nervous because I did smell some of that malted rye component in here, but which I'm normally a bit adverse to. However, I would almost compare it to, there's a pleasantness about it, and I would almost compare it to some Scotch whiskies where we get that gentle struck match note way in the distance that just adds to the whole experience. This is that malted rye component, but again, in the distance, adding to the overall experience. And I was sipping it just as you were talking about milk chocolate and baker's chocolate. And oh my gosh, those notes were so very spot on. The mouthfeel,
it's interesting,
fantastic too.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly on the mouthfeel. I was going to say in relation to something we've been talking about in Extra, the front label says approximately 18 standard drinks. And it's handwritten. The 18 is handwritten. That's that little nod, right? Now, we were saying that in one of our extras, where, don't tell me units, right? Like, just tell me, how many drinks would it be? And if it was a full bottle, what would be in the full bottle, right? I'm a grown-up. I can deal with that, right? Now, and if I should have one standard drink a day, okay, now I know I've got 18 standard drinks going on in my backwoods distilling here. I get just a little bready as I return my nose to it.
Right, yeah, on the nose.
Yeah, just a little bready in there.
And on the finish, without it being overly sweet, because this is not an overly sweet dram. I did get a bit concerned with the wine cask that it could add some additional sweetness that might potentially be too much for my own palate, but it's not at all. In the finish, I get this yuzu flavor without the overbearing yuzu sweetness. Are you familiar with yuzu?
No, tell us what that is.
So yuzu, it's in the citrus family. It's basically a Japanese orange. It was a breed of orange created by mixing a few different varieties, and there you go. And that's the Japanese orange yuzu, and you can get like yuzu jam at a good international food shop. It's got that flavor without the overbearing sweetness.
It's funny that you should say that, because every year around this time, I'll be gifted a Terry's chocolate orange, and I love them. But it's got that kind of orange oil, that orange essence that runs through either the milk chocolate or the dark chocolate, depending on which one you buy. And I was just sitting here thinking, I've got a little bit of Terry's chocolate orange happening on my palate.
There you go.
And so your description of the yuzu?
Yuzu. Y-U-Z-U, not Uzi, not Ari, not Uzi or Ari Tenenbaum from the Royal Tenenbaums, but yuzu, the fruit.
Ozzy, it's also a good listener of ours. It's not Ozzy.
Aussie?
Yeah, that's what it is. Aussie jam. Now we're with you.
Really, this is a great little sipping whiskey. My hat's, if I could fit a hat over this big afro that I have, I would be taking it off and or tipping it to Lee and family on this one, because this is a fine little whiskey.
It is. That's really tasty. I'll be enjoying this over the festive season. I'll be dipping into this.
Oh, Jason, can I tell you? Oh my gosh. So last night, normally I make your latke recipe, which can be found in Vegetarian Times. If you just go Vegetarian Times latkes, do a search for that, you'll find Jason's latke recipe. Keep in mind, dear listener, that vegetarian times removed a key component, a key ingredient, and that's your whole grain or whole seed mustard. But
That's what I like.
so I've been making that, but last night I made my sweet potato ginger latkes. This whiskey would go so freaking well with that ginger spice, that delicate sweetness from the potato. Oh my gosh. Night 8, here I come. That's the last night we're doing latkes is night 8. So
I was thinking we probably need to get, in the new year, we need to get Lee back on One Nation Under Whiskey for a big update, because I don't know if you've been following their social media, Joshua. My guess is you have, because you're very good at social media.
very good at it.
But have you seen the new facility they're developing?
I have. It's really impressive. It's really impressive.
It's remarkable. And so I'd love to get Lee back on and talk about that facility as well. It's holy moly. Can only imagine what that looks like. The final quitting of the job. You know, when we spoke to him, he was still a school teacher. And that's changed for him. There's a lot of developments there in that story. It'd be lovely to catch up with them. And even now, share a dram with them. I think last time we maybe had some samples. Maybe you had a couple of samples. I don't think they'd made it down to me, because we know that you're notoriously terrible at getting samples out.
I don't remember.
But I thoroughly enjoyed your description of the samples that you were enjoying that last time we interviewed Lee.
Yeah, why would you even need to taste anything when my descriptors...
Yeah. I don't, Joshua, that's the honest truth of the matter.
I've been told my descriptors are on
bring
fleek.
all the boys to the yard?
They're on fleek. Kids say that.
No. They bring all the boys to the yard. That's what your descriptors do.
Yeah, but however, because of COVID measures, we can only bring up to 6 boys to the yard, and they have to keep at least a 6-foot distance.
That's very sensible. Are they masked?
Yeah, latex masks. Is this thing still on?
As we are discussing down there, our wonderful friend Cameron Taylor, very, very kind chap, Discovering Drams, based in New Zealand, sent us a card, covered it in the last episode of One Nation Under Whiskey. Given the level to which you butchered the Maori greeting that he had written in the card, he went out of his way to send in a voice recording to our One Nation Under Whiskey Instagram account. And if technology will allow it, I would love for our listeners to hear Cameron's presentation of that Maori greeting right here.
Well, you know what? I will ensure technology allows it, because, Jason, for you, for the listeners, for me, here it is.
Now, also, you weren't to know, but the Maori people speak the Maori language. So Jason was spot on there. And the WH makes a F sound. So to get it right for next time, Kia ora ite whānau. Long life and to you, my family. Thanks, brother.
Listening back to what Cameron had recorded for us, it's clear that I have no right even trying, even dipping my toe into pronouncing the greeting, because, you know, in typical American style, I just destroyed it. So my apologies.
I'll throw you a bone here, though. Like, we don't get a lot of opportunities to practice Maori in the Northern Hemisphere or the United States or in the Eastern United States. But I've got a feeling, Joshua, that way back in your youth, your mother or a teacher took you aside and said, God loves a trier. Because I feel like that is your credo. That you, and I say this with nothing but love in my heart, you're not afraid to try.
Well,
and if I was to say that a little more negatively, you're not afraid to fail. And you grab opportunities with both hands and really, really fuck them up.
Well, you know who told me? You know who pulled me to the side to say that? It was actually Mauri Povich did that.
Oh my word.
Oh, had that one in the chamber.
Oh.
So listen, Jason. Oh, hold on. Before
Yes.
we introduce our conversation with the wonderful Dave Broom, and it was so nice going back to that conversation and editing it and just reliving it, because it was a wonderful experience being with him again. It's always wonderful being with Dave Broom, right? But
Absolutely. Yeah.
I keep going back to this rye. And what I find so very interesting, and maybe it's the way that I approached the whiskey, I'm only discovering the fruitiness of the Shiraz cask now after maybe 4 or 5 sips in. I don't know if I was looking for grain first, looking for oak second, and then looking for what was held in that oak cask previously. I don't know what my brain was trying to do, but all of a sudden that Shiraz is coming out and it's gorgeous. It sits so beautifully.
Yeah.
It fits, not sits, it fits so beautifully with this whiskey.
Yeah, I'm sitting with this nice cherry juiciness to the back of my throat.
Yep.
Yeah. We said it when we first pulled it out. What a great little sipping whiskey. And I think we're just sitting here sipping quite happily on it.
And you finally, you could see the potential with this whiskey. I think this whiskey was perfect it was ready to put in bottle. It's a great experience, but you can also see that given a bit more time, this can evolve into something really quite nice, because as we talked about in our conversation with Lee in the episode we recorded last year or whenever it was, the new make was solid. It was really well constructed new make that surely can evolve quite nicely in cask. So excited, man.
Yeah, really, really wonderful. Yeah, cheers to Lee, and looking forward to talking with you again in the new year.
Yeah.
We won't have to work around his teaching schedule.
That is very true.
We will have to work around his distilling and building schedule, though.
There is that. Different challenges, but I'm sure, assuming/hoping he wants to speak with us again, we will. We're just making an assumption that he would say yes. He may say, but
Been there, guys. Done.
yeah.
As we turn our attention to Dave Broom, Dave was incredibly generous with his time. And as we approached that conversation with Dave, oftentimes you and I'll, obviously, we've mentioned it many, many, many times on the podcast, we don't conduct research ahead of our interviews. We just like to sit down and say, hey, how you doing? Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your job. And I'm thinking to recently talking to Stephanie McLeod with Dewars, that was just, give us a sense of what it looks like to be you. When we talked to Carol Lang, give us a sense of what it is you're up to, within the company. When it comes to Dave, we just sat down and we had that little chat with him, and it was whatever came to mind, whatever felt right in the moment. It was, hey, what you been up to? And one of the remarkable things was actually framing the conversation around this preposterous 2020, right? This year through which we have all lived and done our best and tried to survive. And my thoughts go out to those who have been affected and lost family members and lost friends. But here we are. We're in December. We're in the home straight with 2020, and things aren't miraculously going to improve or change January 1 of 2021. We're in this for the long haul. But it was so fascinating getting to talk to Dave about his experience with the very early pandemic of being trapped in a country that's not your own and unsure of how you're going to get back to the country that is your own. Just a remarkable thing to live through, where you and I think, were fortunate in looking back, where you were at home, I was at home. We weren't, we weren't overseas. And I did have friends who were in the UK when the travel ban came down, and it was, okay, there's no longer flights coming into the United States. And they were kind of like, but we live in the United States.
What do we do now?
We have to get home. And so you and I were home, and it could have looked very, very different for us. And listening to Dave and how he started out this chat really made me feel appreciative of just how lucky we were at the start of lockdown, a response to the pandemic, a dealing with the pandemic. Call it what you will here in America.
Well, yeah. Think about what we had plans. We were meant to be overseas at the very beginning of April. So just, early-ish to mid-March, as all of these things were ramping up and shutting down, we made the correct decision to cancel our trip. Had we not canceled the trip and had we still been able to make that flight over, I do fear that we would have been stuck on the other side of the pond for some time.
Indeed. So instead of us doing what we normally do, which is we try to place some signposts for the listener to pay attention to as they go through the interview, given the way in which we just dipped in and out of this conversation with Dave, I recommend we just hit play on the interview and let our listeners encounter that interview the way we recorded it.
I'm cool with that, man.
Yeah, here he is, the inimitable, the wonderful, the generous with his time, Dave Broom. Dave, thanks for joining us. I was thinking about this morning, are in now. I know that you are a master of the quick, which is rarefied air, right? You've left your keeper status behind. You've become a master. In the world of One Nation Under Whiskey, you're also in rarefied air for a two-time guest. We've got Mark Watt, we've got David Stirk, and I want to say we've got Ollie Chilton. And James Wills, who I think lives in One Nation Under Whiskey, to be honest. We've interviewed him that many times. And so welcome to the world of the two-timer, Dave Broom.
Thank you very much. It's the nicest two-timing I've ever done.
Yeah, there's some things you can get away with. So a very open-ended question to get us started here. 2020, what the fuck is that about?
Jeez. It's the year that you just want to forget. This just did not happen. I'm going to wake up on the 1st of January and go, that was a weird dream. It's been a challenging year.
For a chap like yourself who's out and about and meeting up with people constantly and country hopping, what have you been able to do and what have you not been doing that's really cut you to your quick?
Well, I've not been travelling, to be honest. It started off because we were stranded in New Zealand for 7 weeks. 7 weeks, yeah.
Oh, wow.
At the beginning of the year. I was over there for a whiskey festival and basically we got stuck. That was lockdown number one. By the time I came back here, UK was in lockdown. So went all the way through all of that. Then end of August, beginning of September, things were easing a little bit here and I began to pick up a book project which I was meant to have finished by then. But then that just wasn't going to happen. So we weren't going to be able to get all of that finished. So that was kind of then put on ice, and now we're back in lockdown again.
Wow.
Jeez. The circle of life plays at this point.
That's my year.
So which month was it that you were stuck in New Zealand? Was that still March, or was it earlier than that, later than that?
Well, we flew out to Melbourne on 26th, I think, of February. And then...
A very familiar date.
Yeah, and then we went... I was there with my family. And then we went over to Dramfest, which was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And Monday, the holiday started. And on the Monday, I got a text from the Australian authorities saying I'd been in contact with somebody who'd come down with COVID in Melbourne. Therefore, I had to go straight into 14 days of isolation.
Oh, wow.
Which actually meant I had 6 hours holiday. But then as a result of that, chaos ensued and flights were cancelled and we couldn't get back home. So anyway.
Wow. Yeah, right.
That.
Okay. And so then you had 7 weeks of that. So a 2-week quarantine turned into 7 weeks?
Yeah.
Just because you couldn't get out of the country. You literally couldn't go anywhere.
Couldn't get out of the country. We were due to fly back to Australia to get the connecting flight. That's a really boring story.
I'm absolutely fascinated. For as much as we travel, Dave, this is fascinating.
The Australians had then imposed their own restrictions. And because it wasn't a connecting flight, we would have had to have gone through customs, gone back in, and we wouldn't have been able to do that because as soon as we landed in Australia, we would have had to gone into 14 days isolation. So Australia was out of the equation. So we had to buy another ticket from New Zealand to Hong Kong, then back home. And when we got to Auckland that very night to get the connecting flight the next day, Hong Kong closed its borders. And New Zealand went into level 4, which was total lockdown the day after. Wow. So we scarpered back to Christchurch and stayed there. There you go.
So I'd imagine as a guy who's out and about, traveling.
I can laugh now.
I know, right? That's what I was going to ask you. Given that I'm sure you've dealt with all sorts of travel situations, what was it like charting, this unknown territory? And you've mentioned a couple of times traveling with your family. Were they looking to you as the seasoned traveler, the voice of reason? Are you normally a level-headed guy when the shit hits the fan? Were you less level-headed, more level-headed? And I'm just asking this question as a dad. What was it like?
Yeah, my family never really consider I'm the voice of reason.
Let's be very clear here, yes.
But yeah, I mean, I just felt so responsible for kind of putting them in danger.
Yeah.
Because we knew we were safe. New Zealand they were absolutely brilliant. They can control all of that. They're used to dealing with earthquakes and that dreadful terrorist attack and everything. So they know how to deal with crisis. So we never felt at risk, but you just didn't know when you were going to get home.
Yeah.
So every day would just be this continual phoning up, not getting through to airlines, getting rebuffed by airlines. So it was just this Groundhog Day, and it just wears you down. Psychologically, mentally, it just wears you down. Because we didn't know what things were going to be like. The 12-hour time difference doesn't help either.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And my wife's parents are elderly. They were in lockdown, so we were trying to organise their lives when we're halfway across the world. So, there was all this other, shite suddenly appeared. If I'd been there on my own, I don't know, I would have found ways to get back, but you do feel responsible because I'd invited them out for the perfect holiday, So.
What a bastard!
I know. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I know that when I'm out there by myself, traveling around, you do fill in the gaps however necessary. My number one most important job when I'm out traveling the world and shit's hitting the fan, my number one job is keeping my wife informed at home. That's it. If I can check that box, the rest of it falls into place. If I'm out with my wife and my kids and it starts to go sideways, oh, it's not good. It's not good. And I can't imagine being halfway around the world and simply not knowing when you are getting home. Even just talking about it chills me to my core. And so kudos for living through it and surviving it. And by all accounts, still having a family.
Yes, yeah, they're upstairs at the moment. They still talk to me occasionally. Yeah.
I doff my cap to you. So moving away from that a little bit, you talked there about projects, for you, 2020 projects going sideways. I've seen through the magic of social medias that there was a project that involved you traveling, that it seemed to be a tour of sorts that had you meeting people along the way. Yeah. Am I right in saying some of that came back again before it went away again?
I'm working on a book called Sense of Place. I did a book about Japanese whiskey a couple of years back, which is looking at what makes Japanese whiskey Japanese and how kind of Japanese aesthetic of craft can be transported across into their approach to making whiskey. So I wanted to do something similar in Scotland, not identical, but actually looking at, it's not this terroir thing, but it's about a sense of place, sense of belonging. It's about community. It's, as it transpires, about what is happening in whiskey at the moment. With a wonderful photographer as well, Christina Kernahan. And so Christina and I were due to be going around Scotland to a number of distilleries and pulling all this together. And we managed to do a little bit of it, but then it was just proving to be too difficult. People couldn't commit, quite rightly, people couldn't commit to dates and visits and access to distilleries and access to people. So we managed to get, a third of it done, and then just went, right, forget it, we'll put it on ice and pick it up in March because the light's going to be better, which is quite important for photos.
Indeed.
So, but it's given me a chance to kind of formulate the ideas behind it and do more reading and much more reading. The book list just gets higher and higher. So the advantage of it is I think I've got a clearer idea of how the book is going to progress. So I'm really looking forward to it. But nothing till March.
You're confident that the March, I'm using confident, I don't know if I'm using this lightly or too tightly here, but March 2021 you think will be an unfurling of some of the issues we've lived through in 2020?
No, I'm only saying that basically because I don't think we could restart it prior to that because of the light. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also thinking about where we need to go in Scotland. We should be able to find ways around to talk to the right people and do what we need to do. It won't be as ideal as it was. It was going to be a great road trip and blah, blah. But, the part of the narrative of the book is now going to be how to write a book during COVID. We've got the West Coast stuff done, so.
In terms of the planning of a book, it's something we didn't touch on the last time we spoke. In terms of charting that narrative for a book that you're sitting down, clearly in reading your work, you conduct your research and you're not afraid of research, and I really like that about you. As two guys who run a podcast with literally no research going on behind it. As you're charting that path, what is your plan for writing a book? How much of it do you map and how much of it do you know? And how much of it is, I've done all this research, I'm going to start writing and I'm going to let the narrative come to me?
I have a frame. So I kind of know where I want to end up, and I have an idea. Otherwise, you can't really go to a publisher going, "I've got an idea for a book. What is it?" Well, I don't really know. With nice pictures.
Come on, you're Dave Broom.
You have to have an idea in your mind. But I always speak to my publisher, who I've worked with for years, and say, "You know that this will change. As I begin to get into it, as I get into the research, it's going to take me off." Down other paths, and some bits will be cut, and I'll move it over here. And by the time the whole idea of doing it as a road trip was we're starting in Orkney and we're finishing on Isla.
Yeah.
So it's kind of north to south. Yeah. We're starting with bear. We're finishing with bear being harvested. Ideally, that's not going to happen. So so you got to find a way around that. But as soon as you begin to talk to people, and it's not just distillers, because it's also talking to craftspeople, weavers, or perfumers, etc. The non-whiskey people's approach to things is quite often for me the spark that then begins to either introduce new ideas or begins to link themes or introduce new themes. So, it's an ever-evolving thing. and it sounds a bit vague, but the way that I worked it out with the Japanese book was I had a very fixed idea about what it was going to be. But within the first, week of doing the big trip around Japan, I realised that the book was the road trip. So I just took comprehensive notes, and I didn't write up all the interviews, but I wrote all the almost interlinking ideas. So by the end of the trip, I essentially had the skeleton of the book. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. I'm kind of writing the linking bits of what we've got and working out how the story develops. I think it's developing in a slightly different way to what I originally intended, which sounds kind of vague, but that's the way I work. For this book, if I'm doing I'm now then going on to a complete rewrite of the Atlas, and that's going to be much more structured because I have that's Scotland, that's North America, that's etc. So that's a much more structured. This is by its nature more fluid.
Oh boy, see, this is what we ran into the last time I spoke to you. I've literally got hundreds of questions formulating in my head, and I'm trying to work out how to ask them.
I have one, so if you want
to...
If you want to formulate your questions, I'll ask mine, and then
I've got two that are pertinent to what was just said there.
You do you.
I remember this last time. You never got a word in.
I never got a word in.
This is exactly it.
I'll just be in the other room.
I tell you
listening.
I will say this quickly. We did have our very good friends, Swede Scott and Jess Lomas, after listening to the episode say, "Wow, Jason, we've listened to every one of your interviews. You have never fanboyed harder than you did with Dave Broom." And I said to them, I think I said that in the interview as well. But I'll just very quickly ask these two, Joshua, and then I'll give you space, and then we can pivot away here.
Yeah.
So I read interviews with writers who will say, writing is really difficult. I love being a writer. And in a sense, I love writing when it's done. But in my day-to-day, I have my hours where I sit at my desk and I must write. Even if I write 1,000 words of garbage or 50 words of garbage, I have to write. What's your process there? Are you clocking in, sitting at the desk? Or are you coming to the desk as the mood takes you? Something else entirely?
No. I think you've got to be disciplined, or I have to disciplined, because I'm working on my own. I'm working in my house. It's quite easy just to switch on the telly. So I get up early. I write much better in the morning than I do in the evening. So I'll get up early, go out for a walk, because we're down by the sea and there's not too many people sweating on you that early in the morning. So and then I'll get back and I'll start if I can. But it's been tough, and it's funny, I was talking to some fellow scribes, and everybody has had these points of absolute writer's block. There's so much other stuff on there, it's really hard to concentrate. So I can do a lot of research, but actually I've been finding it hard to kind of sit down and go, right, I need to do a piece or whatever. It's fine now, but it's just kind of come and gone. And I thought it was just me, but there's a whole number of folk who are kind of suffering the same.
Interesting.
It's nothing compared to what folk who are running bars and restaurants are going through, or doctors and nurses and etc.
Sure,
but you know that's my reality. Also, the advantage is that there's fuck all work at the moment, so nobody's missing it.
Okay, this is good. I've got more questions based off of that. Joshua, I promised I would let you get a word in edgewise.
Well,
I do apologise for hogging the conversation.
I appreciate this one time. You'd mentioned before that you look to take some inspiration from non-whiskey people. And I wonder if you can give an example of how that's helped you kind of take a new direction with some of your writing, or helped inform some of your writing.
Yeah, I one of the big themes, I suppose, that's kind of been kicking about in my writing for the past few years is to try and move people away from this idea that whiskey sits apart from everyday life, whereas it's part and parcel of our community, and it's made by real people, and it's made in a real place. So it's a cultural product.
Yeah.
And to begin to place whiskey within that milieu, if you want,
Very nice.
I think it's important to then speak to people who are approaching their own art in a similar way, to try and find connections, to try and find parallels, if not direct connections. If you're being pretentious, maybe some metaphors or something, but it's good to step back and step away from whiskey and actually say, right, big picture. You know, how does whiskey fit into this thing called Scotland? Because it's not separate. It's not separate to Scotland, and if it's part of Scotland, how does it fit into this weird country? And I think only by speaking to people who are not whiskey people, distillers, blenders, whoever, you begin to get an idea of how to write about it and how to talk about it in a slightly different way. So, you know, meeting Donald John Mackay, who's a weaver in Harris, Luscondire Beach, and hearing him talking about growing up there, about where he's getting his inspirations from, just gazing out the window and looking at the colours on the beach and the colours in the sky and the moorland, etc. And to get that idea of the creative process through that. Also, this idea of weaving and warps and wefts and stuff, that's quite intriguing to me. Or going around Rasay with Cuddy, this old guy's a farmer on Rasay.
Okay.
Talking about Gaelic, you know, and talking about place names and talking about the loss of a history, the loss of population, and how that impacts on society, on a concept of place, of identity, etc. Suddenly it becomes deeper, because whiskey's part of that.
Yeah, sure.
Whiskey's story is part of that. And whiskey's story in terms of Gaelic communities is something that really hasn't been talked about. So there's another angle that just suddenly blossoms.
That's fantastic.
You know? So it's, you're getting it from everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, when you first started explaining the idea of the book, I was thinking back to our first conversation where Jason was trying to wrap his head around Japanese whiskey and the flavors from Japanese whiskey. And the discussion was basically that you almost need to have gone to Japan to fully understand that sense of place, right? That, you know, it smells like a Buddhist temple, right? Or you get these other scents. And initially, when you were talking about this, I was thinking, okay, he's going down that route, but it seems to be far deeper than that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's becoming far deeper. And I think the whole place name thing is important. I mean, speaking to a Gaelic writer friend of mine called Callum McLean, who lives in Skye, I remember speaking to him about place names and said, can you actually understand this landscape unless you have Gaelic? And he went, well, actually, no, because there's a reason that mountain is called that. There's a reason that burn is called that, and that ties into myth and it ties into the use of land, etc., etc. And as soon as you lose that connection, then what happens? Does it disappear completely? Does something just get placed on top of it? So that's important, and I think that's a vitally important area.
Yeah.
And actually, the one part of the book that's has proved the most difficult is Speyside, and trying to find this idea of community and what a kind of new Speyside is about. I think I found a way to get around it, but it's quite interesting. Because you go to the northeast, you go to any other part of Scotland, there's lots of new distilleries starting up, there's lots of real great innovations taking place, there's a lot of community distilleries, and remote communities especially, what's happening in Rassie, what's happening in Harris and Torreveg, Ardnamurchan, Nicknain, etc.
Sure.
But in the big established parts, everything is there. Is there much point in building a new distillery in Speyside? Probably not. So how does the sense of identity of place change in Speyside, and how do you then articulate it? So, but I think I've found a way.
That's what 7 months in lockdown will do to you.
Yeah, you go mad.
Right.
You grow a big beard and go mad.
All right, Jason, I've asked my question. I will let, because I know you've got 100 others.
That was an excellent question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Notice he didn't say
Well
that
done,
about
Joshua.
yours, Jason. But
He never says that about mine, no. Yeah. What I lack in quality, I make up in quantity. Okay, so pivoting onto what I thought was kind of a big deal out of 2020 was the whiskey show, the virtual whiskey show with the Whiskey Exchange, and you and Dawn did incredible. Pardon?
And Billy.
And Billy. You did incredible work that week.
Thank you.
Was that a moment when you wondered if you would ever get home? I know you were home. I know you were recording from home, but I felt like every hour of the day you were on my laptop, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I could just tune in, see what you were up to.
It was more tiring than we all thought. It did start with Dawn and I having conversations. She went, probably should have an online adjunct to the actual show, and then obviously the cancellation. All right, we'll do a few classes, and then a few more. And any ideas? Yeah, here's some more ideas. Yeah, that's great. It was all the stuff that we had wanted to do for the past 4 or 5 years, which we were prevented to do because of architecture. You can only have 2 seminar rooms, maybe 3 seminar rooms, and you only have a certain amount of time. Therefore, you can only do X number of masterclasses. Whereas now, you can do as many as you want, and you can have them running simultaneously, and you can have all these different streams going on. So it allowed us to do an awful lot of stuff that we simply wanted to do, and be self-indulgent because we just wanted to drink Madeira and port at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So we did. But it was great, but it was utterly exhausting. I kind of slept for a week. I just got right. I'm having no meetings. I'm not looking at myself again.
That's the part I was going to ask you. Did you just get tired of really just looking at yourself on your own screen constantly?
Yeah, because sometimes there's no response, and there's anybody there, but you just got to keep going because people will come in and watch it again. But yeah, you do think you're going mad.
Yes.
Because you're just sitting there with half a dozen glasses of whiskies going, and now, wow, this was amazing. But you can only see yourself. You nutter.
Do you think going forward, given what you're saying about limitations of architecture, Do you think there'll be a room? There'll be space for an online component to in-person shows, or do you think the online will exist slightly separate to the in-person?
I would say there's definitely going to be online, and certainly for Whiskey Show. I can only speak for Whiskey Show. There will definitely be an online component next year, no matter what, because you have that extra flexibility. You can reach more people. You can speak around the world. You can, it's a really useful thing. So, and I think that people are now beginning to see this in a more creative way.
Yes.
Rather than using, it's a platform that's been built for business meeting. But there are ways in which you can begin to work around. There are interesting new platforms appearing. You can begin to be more creative with it. So that's kind of the aim.
I also wonder if you've now got a consumer base who is willing to see where the online goes. Whereas before, I wonder, how many people knew how to even turn it on, right? How to even just be present with it. And now the question is, well, I can hear from Dave Broom without leaving my house. I can hear, from Billy and Dawn and their guests. And, I wonder if there's that, now that the base wants it, I wonder if we'll see that niche being filled.
Yeah, I think we will. I think what we have to be very careful of is Zoom fatigue, which is where the creative part of it comes in. Because the one thing that I'm worried about is that for the past few years, and I'm talking in kind of general people who wander around the world talking about whiskey, have been trying to move away from the old, right? Here's half a dozen, right? Here's whiskey number 1, Here's whiskey number 2, and do that. The formulaic way of doing it, which works, but it's getting a bit tired. But that's kind of what we've reverted to with Zoom.
Yeah.
And that gets a bit tiring. It gets tiring for the person doing it, and I think it gets tiring for the audience if every brand is doing essentially the same thing. Yeah. So that's one reason why it's so important to try and think of new ways to get into it. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting way to start talking to people. And certainly, Thursday this week, I'm co-hosting a talk on whiskey, a brand. I won't say what brand it is, but it's an internal thing for a sales force in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. So instead of flying a brand ambassador or flying me halfway around the world for 2 days in Taiwan and flying me back home again, we can do this. And you can do that structured tasting and get all the message across. Mm-hmm. So I think that's good. And it's good for the environment. It's good for health because you're not on planes all the time. Mm-hmm. And for certain aspects of education and training, that works. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take away the face-to-face stuff, but the face-to-face stuff that's the important bit. That's stuff you can only do if you're actually there in the market and actually talking to people. So I think what will happen is you'll begin to see this separation of the nature of communication. That is best. That's actually better online. Mm-hmm. That works online, and actually it doesn't work when you're doing it face-to-face. But that has to be done face-to-face. So I think the next year is going to be very interesting as everybody begins to try and work out what this new world looks like. Because we ain't going to go back to the way we were, which is a good thing. Actually.
Yeah, it's been interesting for me watching, we had that evolution in business where we went from, that meeting that we just had in the meeting room could have been an email, but we just spent 2 hours in the meeting room. It could have been an email. Now, listening to you in conversations Joshua and I've had and had with other people in the industry is, that presentation that just happened in person where we flew the person in for could have happened on Zoom. Yeah. It's nice seeing that evolution and see if that will start to take hold what I'm keeping an eye on going forward is if we've had whiskey festivals in New York and in Stockholm and in Amsterdam and so on and so forth. It used to be the case that you could just, well, that's what we did in person there, and that's what we did in person there, and that was all the same. If you're now going to have any success taking your festival online, you're going to have an online point of difference from all those others who have now gone online. That, to me, is a big question going forward. And I'd hate to get to the point where we have one or two online festivals, right?
Oh, God, yes.
Because there's only one or two ways to do this. But I think what you're saying about creativity being unfurled going forward will be huge.
Yeah, I think so. And also, and it was something I was speaking to with Sam Simmons, actually, recently, which is, I think, what you saw at the beginning of the lockdown was that the big sellers, whiskey-wise, blended, this is UK, blended Scotch, so famous grouse, boom, went through the roof.
Yeah.
Buckfast went through the roof. Fever Tree Tonic went through the roof.
Yeah.
More smaller esoteric brands, new brands, people who just wanted reassurance, go back there. And I was worried that would then continue. But what appears to be happening with all of this moving online and the education moving online is it's much more of a kind of level playing field to some extent. In fact, I think some of the big brands, not all the big brands, but some of the big brands are struggling with all of this.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fit their model.
Yeah.
Their model was a massive brand ambassadors out there doing all of this. And the small brands would find it difficult because it was like two people. Where do we go? All of a sudden, this is actually more democratic. You get an equal share of voice to talk, if you're a smaller distiller. That for me is fascinating. And I think if you can ally that, and this isn't anti-big brand or anything, but I think if you can ally that interest, that inherent interest that people have, but they couldn't find ways of discovering that new brand with a more creative way of doing it, then I think that will benefit people.
Yeah.
You get your message out to more people. Instead of reaching 30 people in a whiskey club, you are theoretically getting 300 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because there's been something niggling in my mind about whiskey and where it's been going, especially through COVID, right? Where if we rewind the clock to how did whiskey brands get out there in front of people? Well, there was a lot of marketing of men in tartans, and you'd go to a tasting and they'd have their shortbread cookies, and it was all very nice and quaint, but really old and tired. Got a little bit of an upgrade. Whiskey started becoming cool, right? And now you've got, hip-looking young brand ambassadors going out there trying to get the attention, pretty girls with little black dresses getting your attention, try this whiskey, try that whiskey. And now I think your point is a really good one. These big brands that have relied so heavily on big shows, on interesting marketing, so on and so forth, I wonder where they are now. I'm not seeing anything from them. I'm seeing social media posts from fans and things like that, but I'm almost seeing the outreach from big brands to consumers stopping. And so I'm wondering what you see as a potential path forward for them in grappling with this new online COVID world where maybe shows aren't the way they were anymore. Maybe there's not massive shows and sexy girls and all this stuff, which the sexy girl stuff should have gone away a long time ago anyway. But that's a whole other story. But what do you see as potential ways for these larger brands to grapple with this new world that won't go away?
I think they've got to really look at the education. and they've got to look at the nature of the communication and how to communicate with these people. And that could be how to do a physical tasting. You know, how do you talk about it? I mean, speaking to my good friend Erv Tchaikovsky, and he made a really, really important point, is that you go into a whiskey tasting and you say, how many of you, and you know that is newer people. How many of you have been to a whiskey tasting before? 2 or 3. Okay, right, you're new, it's great. Well, welcome, this is great, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful, it's a versatile drink. Here's half a dozen neat whiskies. You know, and that's the formula.
Yeah. Yep.
You know,
That's it.
the way into whiskey is to drink 6 potentially cask strength whiskies. I mean, come on. It's not the way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to find new ways of communicating. I think that's what big brands will have to do. You know, bring in more of the history, bring in more of the heritage, be more flexible. You know, and stop playing that game of there just being a script.
Yeah.
And that's all we're allowed to talk about. Allow flexibility to exist. And the big brands will survive because the big brands they are high quality.
Yeah.
I'm more excited, to be honest. I'm less worried about the big brands. I'm more excited as to the opportunities that now exist for smaller ones.
I agree with you.
And it's not easy. It's not easy,
Yeah.
but I actually think it's better now than it was maybe last year.
I don't disagree with you that, you know, some of these new distilleries are a bit more exciting these days. I do think about the big guys just because it is them. They're the ones that trudge forward, that make the paths for these other brands. And I'm sure that they'll come through it. I'm not concerned about that. We will get to a place where we're all kind of feeling normal again. But I think the landscape in general has changed, not just for the big boys, but for everyone. And if these smaller craft producers look to the big boys as a potential example of your go-to-market strategy for your brand or educating on your brand, then I think about them and potentially what they can do to be that example.
Yeah, I do wonder about that as well, because I wonder if it's the opposite. I might pick you up wrongly there, but I would say that if you're a new distiller and you're saying, right, I'm going to follow the Glenfiddich model, you're not going to get anywhere because you're not making 20 million litres.
Yeah. Yep.
You might be making 500,000. You know, the parameters are completely different. The story is different. I think the other interesting thing for me, which is one of the advantageous things of being a smaller brand, is, and again, I'm speaking UK here, is that people are now beginning to go, right, we're not going to be ordering from Amazon. We're going to be buying locally. We're looking to try and support communities. And this is like everybody in Britain, but there's a distinct groundswell of people going, right, actually, hang on a minute. It's been too easy just to do click, click, click. Let's look about what's around us. And and this actually comes from the book, I think one of the interesting things about a lot of the newer distillers is the way they are embedded in communities and talking about being local. And I think that resonates. So even if they're not local to your immediate community, I think that message is a really powerful one to get across. And that's quite difficult for a big brand to do. It's not impossible. And I think the community story and the local story for single malt, if you are part of a bigger company, is there and it can be talked about. But again, it's something that needs to be spun around in a slightly different way. I think Balvenie does it exceptionally well.
So this circles back to something I wanted to ask you earlier, but it also ties into one of the sessions at the Whiskey Show, where Nick Morgan, in a conversation around terroir,
Sorry, spat my water.
I was trying to get you to do a spit take there, but you kept it together. Well done. He talked about cultural appropriation with that word terroir. And it was interesting because the session also occurred with was it Steve from Del Maguey?
Yeah.
And Rum was present there. And it's so interesting that I think when you joined the conversation, your word was place, right? And in talking about mezcal, the word is place and people and tradition. And rum is place and tradition and people. And I couldn't help but wonder if Scotch has made a bed for itself. And again, we're just talking about big brands here. If Scotch has made a bed for itself where either place got removed to some extent, but marketing went for the easiest story that could be told. And Joshua mentioned it a moment ago, the tartan, the bagpipes, the shortbread. And in listening to you talking about place and talking to craftspeople outside of whiskey about place, on one hand, as we're talking about these new stories being told and we're talking about craft brands existing within place, if big brands pick up on that, I worry that they will dilute that new messaging to 3 takeaway points that get hit in every tasting because they just can't help themselves. But I do think that it is important to think of Glenfiddich having place, having tradition, having history. You know, talk about Balvenie, I think they tied themselves to craft really well. And certainly the story they were telling in America was one of craft. And so it's interesting to me that if you see craft producers set up a point of difference, it's inevitable that the marketing from the big boys will find their way to a version of the same messaging. Do I have to ask you a question at the end of that?
No. Question mark. Yeah. There's.
What do you think, Dave?
It's something. It's something we touched on in the Amber Light, the film we made, which is
Good,
kind of
I wanted to ask you about that as well.
Kind of parallel to the book, different to the book, but there's some commonality there. And it's really interesting looking at how the links between whiskey and Scotland, for me anyway, I think Nick disagrees with me on this, but for me, they begin to fray around the edge at the tail end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. The same thing happens in Scottish song. You get Harry Lauder, the same Scottish literature, it becomes very kind of... Scottish term is couthy, but sentimentalised. And you see that with whiskey as well. And you can understand it with whiskey because suddenly it's a global spirit and you've got to sell it into markets where they don't necessarily know where Scotland is, etc., etc. So what are the shorthand? You know, this new world of advertising, you've got to say, it's about this. What you're going to use, the cliches which are already sprung up around Scotland, which is going to be that kind of Walter Scott Balmorality. But I think as a result of that, I think the rest of the world picked up on it, and I think it became really an important way of doing it. But whiskey lost its connection with Scotland. You know, so we didn't see whiskey as being ours. And this is kind of weird thing, actually. You know, I knew whiskey was made in Scotland when I was growing up, but I didn't really feel it was part of me. But I think that's changing. I think that's changing now, and I think single malt has helped, because single malt is all about this place, this distillery, this flavour, only place in the world you're going to get that, boom, that's brilliant. I think that's where blends have struggled in some markets, because they're amorphous, they're international, they're global things. It's where some single malts, I think, down the line may struggle because they've deliberately moved themselves away into luxury markets where the connection with a spot on the earth is divorced, to be honest. So, yeah, I mean, that terroir debate was a fascinating one because I don't believe you can... And there's too many compromises that you have to make. to try and impose wine terroir on top of whiskey. There's too many differences. And even if you do see some differences, say from not just barley variety, but maybe from field to field or whatever, in the new make stage, but since you put it into a cask after 4 or 5 years, any of those subtle nuances may well have disappeared. So I'm not disputing that it exists, but I don't think we can use that word because that word means something else. So I think we've got to look at it in a different way. And that's why I like talking about place, because it's a wider concept. It brings in so many more things. It brings in the human touch. Whereas terroir can also become abstracted. You know, it's not actually part of us. It's all to do with soil and rainfall and slopes and sunshine and etc. etc. And that's what it's about. And you have to be very hands off. That's why there's so many fucking disgusting natural wines out there, because winemakers are kind of going, that's all right, I'm just going to let the grapes do what they want to do. You know, and it's vile. You know. You know, it's bound to happen with spirits at some stage. You know, why should we take a middle cut? You know, there's some wonderful flavours in defence. You know, what's wrong with methanol? You know, there's a good reason. It's a good reason that there are people called blenders and distillers and winemakers who are there, corralling and gently persuading flavours to emerge.
Sure.
And that's why I don't think terroir is appropriate to talk, or an appropriate term to use with whiskey, but place is, because place brings in people and culture and all of that.
What do we do with the commodification of barley under the rubric of place? Because that to me is the troublemaker there. Where, you know, is it coming from Russia? Is it coming from the southeast of England, right? Is it coming from some corner of Scotland? Can we overcome the commodification of barley to get back to people and geography? And
yes and no. If you go back to 19th century, you will find that the bulk of barley being used for Scotch whisky was coming from England or coming from the continent. It wasn't coming from Scotland. You know, Scotland has always used imported barley. It's very difficult for the Scotch whisky industry to be supported on the amount of barley that's grown and harvest and the interesting climatic conditions that we have in Scotland. So, but I agree. I agree that the whole provenance of barley is very important, and the interesting thing about barley variety in conceivably giving flavour, and barley varieties which are suited to specific areas. You know, the climatic conditions in Islay, like Kilhoman, significantly different to that in Fife.
Yeah.
You know, so why are they planting the same varieties? You know. So, and for me, one of the most fascinating talks that took place at the Whisky Show was Steve Jones from the Bread Lab in Washington State, and Dr. James Brosnan from the Scotch Whisky Research Institute, who is overseeing or helping to oversee the International Barley Hub, and he's going, we've got to get this sorted. We've got to get it sorted because of climate emergency, for sustainability, and for flavour. So that is happening. So within the next decade, I think you will see a much greater fine-tuning of barley and barley strains or new crosses more suited to different parts, and we're just talking about Scotland, within Scotland itself, which some distillers will utilise. Because that will give them a point of difference. Yeah. If you're making, you know, huge amount of volume, and your setup uses a different strain of barley, which is higher yielding, etc., that's fine. So I'm not kind of revisionist in this and going, oh, we have to try and make whiskey the way it was made in 1823.
Sure, yeah.
The whiskey that was made in 1823 was bloody awful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's face it. What I'm saying is that let's at least have an option. And it's fascinating to see Scotch whisky research coming in and going, right, we have to do it for a multiplicity of different regions. Yeah. Barley's a biggie. Yeah.
Well, and having heard yield for decades now, and it was just accepted. The barley's just here for the yield.
Yeah.
And then coming out of beer production, and now talking about yeast, it's lovely to see the number of directions the conversation can go, but still understanding there's a big factory here that's charged with making X million litres of spirit annually. That's the business model. Yeah. And so I absolutely agree with you that we should not be looking backwards and saying, we have to be tasting this the way Alfred Bernard tasted this. That seems to defeat the whole purpose of progress. Yeah. But I would like to see an awareness of the consumer who is saying, and we had this conversation at Coleman, we had it with Anthony Wills, right before the fish, where we are talking, but what can yeast do? What can different barley strains do? If you are a distiller who's set up in such a way that you are able to explore it, go ahead and explore it. Mark René over at Waterford, you want to explore that? Go bananas, and he is right. Go bananas, and let's see what it is. The proof is in the pudding, as we all grew up.
Yeah, and you've got to continue to ask questions. If you've been in a position of power for 100 odd years, as Scotch had, no real rivals globally. If you're the only player, then you get stuck in your ways. If you've gone through the crisis of the 1980s, where distilleries were closing, you're going to be naturally cautious. Even for a Scotsman, you're going to be cautious. Risk? No. We want to make sure that this industry is going to survive.
Yeah.
So you can understand why the thinking from in the 1990s and beginning of this century is different to the thinking now, because the world has changed, the world has moved on. So, and also, if I'm a distiller, if I'm wanting to start a whisky distillery in Scotland these days, I'm not going to be thinking about, I'm going to be selling 70% of my wares to a big blending firm. I'm going to be making it for my single malt. And because I'm making it for a single malt in an established market where it's difficult to get on the shelf, I've got to look very, very hard about ways in which to make the flavour different.
Yeah.
And the big story. So this is a complete reset for whiskey, for Scotch whiskey, for single malt especially. This is single malt becoming single malt, rather than being brands or whiskies which existed in parallel to being fillings.
Yeah.
This is a complete reset. And the thinking behind it, the philosophy behind it is totally different. That's really exciting. And as a result of that, people are going, well, let's look at roasts, let's look at barley variety, let's look at yeast, let's look at making, and I'm looking at a bottle of Ardnamurchan here. Let's make two different styles of whiskey, but blend them together, rather than keeping them all separate.
Yeah.
But it's because of that reset, and because of the nature of whiskey, it takes time for it to begin to manifest itself. But it has been going on for probably 10 years, and now we're beginning to see it bearing fruit.
Do you think that some of the new producers might be facing a period of time where, in a way, they feel as if they're pushing water uphill, in that they're producing spirit specifically for single malt? They don't have the luxury to sell off spirit for fillings or to go into blends. They don't have that constant revenue stream coming in. So what you find that to be a big stumbling block for some of these producers?
Oh God, yes. Yeah. You've got a very deep pockets. You were saying you'd been talking to Ewan at Aaron.
Yeah.
Well-run company. the newest distillery on the block. Took them about 10 years to turn a profit.
Yeah.
Even though they're really, really well run, making brilliant whiskey that everybody loved, it's expensive business. It's a really, really expensive business. So yeah, all these new distillers will find it hard. Where's the distribution? Who's going to buy? Who's going to listen? What's my point of difference? I've got to buy more wood every year. I've got to hold some back. Can probably release it a bit earlier.
Yeah.
Than we did in the past, but even then, yeah, it's a long-term business. And the key is quality. The key is quality and a genuine point of it. It's no good making a nice whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got to be exceptional.
Yep.
Everybody knows how to make nice whiskey.
So here's a thing we've been discussing internally, and we actually just talked to Ollie Chilton about just over a dram, is, are you encountering exceptional whiskey? And you're clearly tasting a ton, and we're tasting a lot, and Ollie over there is doing all of his tasting malarkey. It's interesting to me that I don't want to become jaded, right? And I tidied up my desk last night. I had 20 open bottles of whiskey just on my desk, cluttering it up. And I know that for some people, that's their whiskey collection. And for me, that was just something that was annoying me and I was working around. So I don't want to become jaded. I don't want to be spoiled or ruined here. But I'm encountering so many whiskies where I go, yeah, I'd drink that of a night. Yeah, I'd drink that of a night.
It's nice.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't quite... it's not even that I don't know where exceptional is anymore. I don't even know what I would consider exceptional right now. And so for you, Dave, are there moments when a whiskey is still stopping you in your tracks?
Yeah.
Are you able to put some leaves on the branches of what does exceptional mean when encountered within whiskey?
When I'm tasting, and it'll be the same for you guys as well, there's three elements. We said 2 fingers, 3 elements. That's something that looks a bit weird.
Yeah, there you go.
Someone's had a
3
carpentry
elements.
accident.
Okay. Number 1. Okay. Number 1, balance, complexity, and character. And their interplay. And I find that the nice whiskies are well balanced, but they're probably maybe a little bit low in character and that individuality. And as a result, maybe a little bit low in complexity. So that's always at the back of my mind, are all these elements working together? And you find some new ones where they are. They do exist.
So can a new distiller come on the scene with an exceptional whiskey? Or is it more a watch this space and the complexity will come as that new make spends time in the cask?
I mentioned Ardnamurchan. It's an exceptional whiskey.
Yeah.
I've tasted the individual cask components for Razzie. Jeez, that's going to be an amazing whiskey.
Yeah. We got Ian on the podcast when we were at Maltstock and tasted individual components and said the same thing. Like, wee!
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really, really exciting. So, there's 2. So, you look at what Daft Mill is doing, you look what Inchtairney is doing. Inchtairney is an extraordinary distillery. So they are out there.
That's really great to hear. It actually, hearing this, made me think of a new make spirit review that Serge did. I forget the name, but it's the Japanese distillery that now has one of the Karazawa stills.
Shizuoka.
Yeah, Shizuoka. And Serge gave that new make 91 points, just on the new make alone, saying this.
Yeah.
It's clear how remarkable this whiskey will be just from the sampling of the new make.
Yeah, they're making amazing stuff. Kanosuke, extraordinary, really, really good. Yeah. There's some great new mix out there.
Yeah, that's really
They
great.
need to be aged.
It's exciting. Yeah, that's.
But low sulfur. So as a result of it being low in kind of sulfur and kind of hairy bits, it's going to mature, or it's going to start its journey into maturity a lot quicker, because you're not having to remove as much in order for that mature character to come through. So you're going to be getting a whiskey that's coming up quicker. Kilchoman, again, I mentioned it a few times, but Kilchoman a really good example of that. Nicknayan, really good example of that.
Okay.
Making a very, and I don't like using the word clean because it sounds neutral, but a non-sulfured new make that'll allow you to come in and show that character earlier. Not that there's anything wrong with sulfur in new make.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Good to get that on the record.
If that's the style you want to make,
Yeah.
which will be for longer term maturation, boom, you need it.
Right. That's Mortlock for you right there. Right.
There's more
Yeah.
for it. There's Craigellachie.
Yeah.
Exactly.
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 I had one last question in my mind. It takes us away from where this conversation has been taking us, but it's up to you, Jason, if you had another question. Also, I want to be respectful of your time, Dave.
No, it's fine. I've got no work, as I said.
Well, okay. Well, let me ask it again. Ask it now anyway, because it's apropos
Gallows humor.
to your work. We touched a little bit on your writing process, and I've never written anything beyond a blog post, right? But I'm always curious about people's writing process and wonder if it's a linear thing. Is writing linear, or do you find it to be a patchwork of bits and bobs that you're able to then put together in the end?
Yeah, it's probably a patchwork, to be honest. I just kind of sound dreadfully pretentious, but I have to say it was somebody else that wrote it. Otherwise, somebody will go, "Oh, maybe somebody else said that." It was the writer Jack Kerouac said, just start writing. It's like running a tap, and the water's kind of tepid to begin with, and eventually it'll become cold and clear, and boom, you've got it. So yeah, it's a matter of just kind of getting down there. And the first couple of paragraphs will be rubbish, and suddenly, a theme will begin to emerge. Or I still write in notebooks, and it'll just be impressions, and then there'll suddenly be something. Actually, that, and that doesn't fit with that, but that's actually another idea. So, yeah, it's a bit haphazard, but yeah, it's the way I work. But it's different for everyone,
Are you able to work on multiple writing projects without? Yeah, you are. You can compartmentalize. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was an interesting one when my wife began looking after kind of the admin and samples and everything. And I go, right, okay, I'm working on this, but I'm also working on this. But that's priority, and then that's A and B. And then another job would come in, and it would be suddenly, well, that deadline's shorter, and go, actually, you've got to do this, but I'm doing those. Yeah, but that was now priority. So there's always this kind of, well, in the good old days, there's always this juggling, always this kind of juggling going on. So yeah, as long as you don't let them leach into it, and you end up just writing the same thing.
Right.
But try and keep them completely separate from each other. The one thing I didn't mention is that I do have a website.
Oh,
Yeah, called
Please, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, which I always forget. It's called The Whiskey Manual. That's what I have been working on. thewhiskeymanual.uk, and that's where I put up tasting notes and all that other stuff.
not .co.uk. It's just .uk.
Nope, just UK.
Okay.
I probably should have done .co.uk, but no, it's. In fact, if you do .co.uk, it'll probably get through. Then.
Okay.
Okay. We'll put it to the test. We're those types of geeks. We'll put it to the test.
Yes, you are.
But what's interesting about the journey you've taken, Dave, is when we were talking on the last episode, actually our Thanksgiving episode of One Nation Under Whiskey, we were talking to her wives, which was very pleasant for the most part. and I would, I talked about, I was teaching philosophy and I started a whiskey tasting society, and then I launched the blog because I wanted a place to put my notes. There was a part of me contemplated, could I parlay this blog into some writing jobs? One of my ambitions growing up was to be a writer. And philosophy took me instead. And so that was kind of like, would this parlay into that? And the fact that it turned into an independent bottling business, totally came out of left field, thanks to the other gentleman in this conversation. It's been interesting for me looking at you, very successful author, chap, touring the world, running tastings and being, Dave Broom whiskey guy, to now have a blog. And it's so interesting because at the time when we were blogging, we used to legitimize that enterprise as much as we possibly could. But we would draw attention to Sam Simmons, to Serge Valentin, to Kevin Erskine, right? Well, look how good a job those guys are doing. There's something here. And when we were working on ours, there was Gal at Whiskey Israel and Mark at Whiskey and Neil and Joel at Cask Strength and Ruben at Whiskey Notes. And I feel like they're now the elder statesmen of blogging. And just as blogging has gone into this world of, really you just do it because you can get some booze showing up on your doorstep, through the saloon doors comes Dave bloody Broom. And then and I know you're a modest chap, and I know you're not going to answer this the way I want you to. Do you think your presence helps to legitimize blogging? Boom! What a question. You like it?
Wow.
I do like it. I don't consider it a blog. I consider it a website.
It's a website, right? That's
How
the
dare
words
you
you used earlier.
How dare you call me a blog?
He did say website, Jason.
Yeah,
I've
I'm
spent
legitimizing nothing.
30 fucking years doing it. I'm not a blogger, Johnny come lately,
100%.
Yeah, it's... I've never really thought about it in that way, to be perfectly honest. It was just with the closure of ScotchWhiskey.com.
Yes.
And
yes.
there's a limited number of outlets that you can write for in terms of whiskey. I thought, well, actually, I've still got stuff to say. I'm still going around the world. People are still sending me the whiskies, so I want to keep my hand in.
Yeah.
And that's the reason for doing it. Yeah. I enjoy it. And it's an interesting discipline. Does it legitimise blogging? I think blogging's been legitimised, to be honest. I think the good guys...
There's a statement more polemical than Terroir. Like, holy moly, okay.
No, I think the good blogs and the good are really well worth reading. Edinburgh Whiskey blog, fantastic. Really,
Absolutely.
really good. Really well written.
Yep, agreed.
And I think you can see the ones where people step back and look at whiskey rather than the blog just being a vehicle for their obsessions, and for ranting. They actually then step back and begin to analyse stuff.
Yeah.
That is when it becomes interesting. And that's when it stops being a blog and actually becomes something that you're going to read because it's thought provoking and it's different. And they're not running out of steam. Like, actually, I've written everything I ever want to write about.
Yeah,
whiskey.
Yeah.
It's all done. It's
Nope.
it's a big subject. So yeah, the good ones will continue, and the ones where people think they can do it and are enthusiastic, brilliant. But they will, there'll be a natural attrition.
Yes. Well, which is funny. I think I started saying that maybe, which year are we in? Maybe 12 years ago. I think I was talking about blogging as a meritocracy, and the good ones would rise and find an audience, and the lesser would fall away. And now we've just got thousands upon thousands of them.
Yeah.
Why couldn't ScotchWhiskey.com be monetized? I just wondered about it myself because people have a hard time. For those of us who have really kind of come along with the internet, everything's for free. You know, all your information is free. Read the New York Times, but don't pay for it. And anytime some website comes up with a pay model, people just move en masse to the one that remains free. And so I wonder if there was a concern that you had the audience, but to monetize it, folk would just go, I'm not going to do that.
The move towards monetization came too late. It should have come considerably earlier.
Okay.
Yep.
Also, and that seems like I'm putting blame on the wrong people. Also, the industry has changed. You know, the old ways of advertising have gone. You know, Imbibe magazine in the UK is just closed.
I know.
You know,
my gosh.
You know, there are no ads anymore. You know, that model, that financial model of promotion has gone. So I think if we'd approached, or not we, because we were editorial, I think if the distillers had been approached 18 months, 2 years earlier, it would have been okay. But it came at exactly the wrong time. And it was losing money, or it wasn't making any money because, you know, there was no money coming in. So it was a real shame.
Yeah, it's definitely a loss. It is interesting to talking to so many different people
100%.
where we all had scotchwhiskey.com in common. And that's certainly rare. I think when it came to some of the bloggers, you would invariably have your favourites, maybe 3 or 4 that you would read, but that wasn't to lessen other good ones. Scotchwhiskey.com was something we all had in common. It was trying to do something much larger. And I think that was worth applauding it for.
It was hugely ambitious, you know. Maybe too ambitious, too early. I don't know. But we loved what we did. We got fantastic support, and it's a shame what happened. But who knows? Who knows?
Sorry,
who
man.
knows what may
Sorry.
happen? You know.
Well, I'm going to turn off the faucet of questions here, and
I always enjoy your faucet.
I enjoy so talking to you. There are questions that I have purposely not asked you that are going to be when you come back for the third time. I've got questions ready to go. We get every guest out of here on this. It's really it's taken on a new life in 2020. Looking ahead, Dave Broom, what are you most excited for? Clearly, this COVID answers here, and maybe the work coming back in again will be part of this. Clearly, we've talked about the project. Clearly, you talked about March being the earliest you'd be able to get back onto that. But even the industry writ large, you don't even have to answer it for yourself. You can if you want. But as you look forward, what are you excited about within whiskey?
What am I excited about? I know what I want to happen. I mean, I'm so looking forward to seeing people again. You know, actually being in the room with people and having a dram. That's so important. I'm looking forward to going to friends' bars and, thank goodness, raising a glass because they've managed to survive.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking forward to. How will whiskey change? And I think if all things will never be the same, but if things can begin to come back up again, we are already at a hugely exciting time in whiskey's evolution. And this isn't just Scotch. This is global. You know, the quality of the whiskey coming out of England at the moment is amazing. There's going to be great stuff from Ireland. There's definitely great stuff coming from the States. Amazing whiskies coming from New Zealand. Australia has now just all of a sudden taken off again. You know, so there's whiskey. You know, I mean, this does not look like a sample of whiskey, but
Yeah.
I swear it is.
So what's your
We're
calcium
not your
level
doctors.
at?
This is Faroe Islands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So distilling in Faroes, and it's lovely.
Wow.
You know. So yeah. You have to be
Okay.
optimistic. You have to be optimistic.
Yeah.
This is very
Yeah,
cool.
So I'm looking
whiskey
forward to seeing
as
you
a
guys.
category
Yeah.
remains buoyant.
Yes and no. You know, I think there's probably too much whiskey getting made around the world, to be honest. I don't think given the number of distilleries which are opening up, I don't think you're seeing a commensurate rise in whiskey consumption. So that's going to be the interesting one in the next 5 to 10 years, because I think you will see some distilleries just simply can't survive, or the model's going to shift significantly.
Do you think it'll ultimately be a meritocracy? You think the good ones will survive, or do you think we'll even lose some good ones?
I think we'll lose some good ones.
Yeah.
I think we'll lose the good ones who don't have a business plan or have a less good business plan, or who are just unfortunate. Shit happens.
Cool. Yeah.
It does happen.
But,
that's 2020 in a nutshell. Shit happens.
And how?
I was just going to say, usually that last question ends on a high note, but we ended in a conversational cul-de-sac there with a very sad note.
Yeah, excellent. Sorry, I just got overly Scottish about that.
Nice.
It was that last question from Jason. I'm just like, sorry.
I know. I am sorry.
We're paddling in a whistle. Loch, I'm sorry.
I do apologise. Jason's
No, everything's going to be wonderful. Yeah, everything's going to be, especially for independent bottlers. Yeah, especially for independent bottlers.
Indeed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, geez, that's so funny. We've spoken to you twice. I don't think we've talked about independent bottlers either time. So
No.
I always find it interesting when it becomes clear to me that people's minds work in a different way than mine. And here at 47 years of age, I shouldn't be surprised. I shouldn't be surprised when I put forth an opinion or an idea and someone says, yeah, I hear you on that, but have you thought about it this way, right? And just listening back to, my question to Dave and saying, here we are during COVID time, new distilleries opening up, trying to get their footing, and what they're lacking is the big boys leading the way in what it looks like to grow a brand during COVID, because the big brands seemingly aren't really making much of a splash or haven't been, though I do have a little bit of an update, and I want to tell you about that in a second. These big brands seem to be quieter compared to some of these smaller brands I'm seeing, which are taking who are making full use of social media stuff and Zoom and all these things. When we lived in a time where the big boys led the way, we're now in a time where that's not what whiskey looks like right now. And these smaller brands that Dave is trying to shed a light on, they are blazing their own path. And wouldn't it be interesting if their paths succeed and the big boys have to follow suit, right? And change the way that they work. Boy, in some cases, wouldn't that be nice?
yeah, it would certainly be intriguing to see the thought of a smaller company being able to pivot, to be able to think on its feet, to have instantaneous decisions being made on the route forward tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's just not something you see with the behemoths.
Yeah.
On the behemoth side, of course, is they've already put in so much work that people do continue to go to the liquor store and buy that brand.
Yeah.
Getting drinks to go, cocktails to go in an establishment that's trying to keep its doors open and its lights on during COVID and COVID restrictions. Customers know what to ask for, right? They're not necessarily going to go exploring at that point. But yes, if you can get on social media, if you can get on a Zoom, if you can get some tasting packs shipped out to some people, obviously COVID has impacted that at the end of the year here. But there's other ways to think about it, right? And I think for the type of whiskey consumer that listens to a podcast like ours, they're putting in the time and the effort to seek out the smaller producers, those who are making swifter pivots. And so, in a way here, I think we're preaching to the choir, as they say, but to know that our listeners then approach their friends and say, have you tried? It's that grassroots brand ambassadorial role that consumers are taking on for themselves. And that's what Single Cask Nation has greatly benefited from. And that we love receiving those emails that say, I shared this with this friend, socially distanced in the backyard. I sent an email to that friend and told them to look out for it at retail or on a website. Like, that's what we have greatly benefited from. And it's something that I think the pandemic is leading to others benefiting from as well.
Yeah. Yes. I did want to say, however, that last night, Haida and I were watching something on Hulu. Oh, we were watching Pen 15, the new season of Pen 15 on Hulu. If you don't know it, Jason, that show is so up your alley. You'd really enjoy it. Two women who are playing seventh graders and showing what life is like for seventh graders, and it's so well done. It's so smart.
Just to be clear, when you say this would be right up my alley, just for the benefit of the listeners, what is it about it that would be right up my alley now you've described two women living life as seventh graders?
Because you enjoy a story well told and jokes well said. And what's nice about the show is that it infuses a really great story, a really funny story, with honest to goodness feelings of this is what it's like to be in seventh grade. And I feel as if I'm reliving bits of seventh grade watching this show, of being a 12-year-old kid. It's really well done. But the reason that I bring this up is during one of the commercial breaks, there was a 1 minute long commercial from Maker's Mark that I thought was brilliant. And what it was is they hired some chef slash mixologist or mixologist slash chef, whatever it was. I didn't recognize the person, but here he is. He's in his kitchen, and he's showing you how to make a Maker's Mark cocktail. And I thought that was brilliant because it was so obvious. He's home. What do we do when we're home? You're making home cocktails. Like, that, in my opinion, is a company who said, okay, we have to do something. How do we make it so people bring our bottles home? How about a great 1 minute tutorial on how to make a nice, quick, and easy cocktail?
It's interesting that you mention Maker's Mark because you and I are fans of the podcast Smartless. And they, in recent episodes, one of their commercials has been Maker's Mark.
There you go.
And it's interesting, at this time, they're really the only, for all the places where I consume media, Maker's Mark is the only one I'm hearing from. I'm not hearing from the other players right now. And I'm not saying they're not advertising. I'm just saying in the places where I consume media, I'm only hearing Maker's Mark.
That's a really good point. You know, as we were talking with Dave, and I'm saying I'm not seeing anything from the big boys. The fact of the matter is, media is so big right now, and their focus simply may not be within the demographics or my interests. Right? They could be going after sports for all I know. I don't follow sports, so I would never see that. So, yeah. I did like, and I'm going to end my insights here, but feel free to add on. I did quite like the way you ended the podcast, where you said, you know, these two times where we sat down to record a conversation, we never once discussed independent bottlers. That'll be our third conversation. I love how you just, it's like going to someone's house and leaving your jacket there because you got to go back and get it.
Actually, Joshua, it's leaving an earring down the side cushion on the couch. That's the move.
Right? Or do you do that a lot? Do you leave earrings just,
Either that or my knickers. But it is interesting because, you and I were asking him questions about his process. Mm-hmm. And I got the sense that he didn't really want to dive into it too much. He'd give us an answer and he'd answer the question, but it wasn't the usual Dave Broom deep dive unpacking. It was more a case of, I just simply do this. I sit down, I make myself put in the time, and that's kind of it. And it's interesting, as much as he didn't want to talk about process too much, you and I haven't really wanted to turn the lens back onto ourselves within those interviews. It's been much more Dave, tell us about, where things started. Dave, tell us about Japan. Dave, tell us about something else, right? And so to hear Dave on independent bottlers, I think will be absolutely fascinating. But it's, again, going to be us from within our realm turning the floor over to Dave to learn from him and his perspective and the historical context that he delivers on independent bottling. I'm really looking forward to it.
I am too, and I have had a question in the chamber since the day we recorded where you said that, and I said, "Oh my gosh, that's right. We haven't spoken with Dave about this, and boy, do I have a question." And so I've been holding on to that question. So come 2021, I'm saving it for him.
Right.
I'm going to save my question virginity for Dave.
Wow, lucky old Dave. Next, you'll be leaving earrings down the side of the couch.
That or my knickers. One or the other. Now I have a question for you, Jason.
Uh-huh. Is this a question that's being recorded, or is this a production meeting question?
Why not both?
Why not both?
Do we need to wake the paper boy?
Yes. Please do wake the paper boy.
Extra, extra! Read all about it! Life story of Playboy Penny! Extra, extra! Extra, extra! Read all about it! Me and that Playboy in trouble again! Extra, extra!
So that seemed like a pretty confident yes. Please do wake up the paper boy kind of comment, which makes me think you got a bit of news that you want to share. So why don't you go ahead first?
Yeah, I'm curious on the correct order to actually put this into the podcast, because on one hand, we mentioned in the last episode, if you're a retailer, a distributor, a member of a whiskey club, and you want to do a cask pick with Single Cask Nation, reach out to info@singlecasknation.com. Mm-hmm. And we have started hearing from groups over there. And that's been really wonderful, really exciting. I've reached a point in those conversations where we're now going to pivot back, or we will return to the conversation once the calendar turns to 2021. Mm-hmm. But it's been excellent getting their interest noted and into a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Yep.
So as that part is building, really wonderful. We also, through you, Joshua, we have got a Single Cask has been bottled for 99 bottles in Connecticut.
Correct.
Do you want to tell us what that is?
Yes, that was a 12-year-old. It's a bourbon from Tennessee. And we can't disclose the distillery. Kind of puts us in a pickle, not being able to disclose the distillery name, But anyway, we've done that. A 12-year-old, bottled at 57.1% alcohol, natural cask strength.
Listeners cannot see me rocking back and forth in my chair as you deliver a terrible, terrible hint as to what's in the bottle.
I'm
sorry,
hold on.
continue.
Yeah, hold on. I just want to take another tipple of this whiskey up right here. So there's that for 99 bottles, and I know what people are thinking immediately. They're thinking Single Cask Nation store exclusive, 99 bottles. Let me call them up and see if they'll ship to my state. And 99 bottles doesn't ship at all. So you've got to have a friend in Connecticut who can pick up a bottle for you if you live out of state. I know some people who have driven 2, 3, 4 hours to Connecticut to get these bottles, which is pretty damn impressive. So that's one exclusive. There's a sister cask, Jason, that we bottled as an exclusive for California. So our distributor there, JVS Imports, we did an exclusive for them, and that's a 14-year-old from the same Tennessee bourbon distillery. And that one's bottled at 57.2% alcohol. And so the 99 bottles one, I think we got 140 bottles. And the one for California, there's only about 108, 109. The label says 140, but we lost a bit. So,
yeah. And then there's also a sister cask that went to South Africa.
That's right. There's a sister cask that went to Whiskey Brother in South Africa, and that one was a 13-year-old. So we have 12 years for Connecticut, 13 years for South Africa, 14 years for California. And here's what I want to say. The last thing that I want to say about these 3 casks, similar to our Pappy Nonsense, which had bourbon from the same distillery, the reason that we purchased this parcel of casks is that all of them veered from the standard flavor profile of this distillery, which is one of my favorite bourbon profiles, if I'm being very honest. It's very peanut buttery. There's a slightly medicinal note going on. People will say it's like Fred Flintstone's vitamins or multivitamins or something like that. Like, I love that flavor profile, but these casks specifically ignored those notes and really focused more on the fruity elements of the spirit, though that nuttiness still remains.
Yeah, the casks, when we originally sampled them, all had fantastic components going on in them. And yeah, we bought a few.
And there's one more exclusive.
I was about to say this, yes.
Yeah, would you mind sharing the news of that?
I was only gonna give you the intro to it and let you take away the details. But we do have a single malt Scotch exclusive single cask going into Roma in New York City.
Mm-hmm. Roma Wines. And that is a 10-year-old bottled at full cask strength. Of course, everything that we do is bottled at full cask strength. Let me see, it's 58.8% alcohol. And I need to give you the tasting notes. So normally...
I remember them well.
So normally we would write the label tasting notes, but this time around, Anthony Levinson, who's the spirits buyer at the store, came up with his tasting notes, and they read as such: if we could sum up this whiskey into 3 words, they would be, quote, barbecue roasted marshmallows. We also get smoked salt, and I love this. You ready? Weaponized confectioner's sugar and chipotle baked pears. A wonderfully balanced peated Highland with a supple mouthfeel that shows you a slightly softer side of peat.
Yeah, it's a great cask. A great cask.
And it allows me to say supple.
And indeed you did say it.
I could do the whole thing. If we sum up this whiskey in 3 words... But I won't do that. Anyway, continue. Was there more news, Jason?
Was there more news? Yes.
There was.
Our
very important news.
Second retail release for UK, Europe, and rest of the world has left our warehouse in Scotland. It's on its way to Japan. It's on its way to Germany. It's on its way to Sweden. And elements, aspects, bottles are on their way to UK retailers. So we're getting very close to seeing that on many, many more shelves. and Jess will be over the moon when that finally happens.
And for those of you that do some shopping in UK shops, whether you live in the UK or you live in a country where these shops can ship to you, definitely keep a lookout at the Whiskey Exchange website, the Master of Malt website, and the Whiskey World website. All three of those will definitely have some of our bottlings. We're hoping to expand that, but here we are getting close to Christmas, so it may not be until after the first of the year where you will see us get into more shops, but at the very least, those three shops will give you what you need.
Well, and even speaking about the difficulty of A, getting in, and then B, keeping it available, our Kalila finally made it to a small corner of Canada. We got some Kalila into Montreal in Quebec.
Yeah, in Quebec. And
it sold out immediately.
Within the day. It was in and out and gone.
That's it.
So we're in discussions now with our distributor in Montreal about getting some more of our whiskey over there. We're going to start preliminary conversations with potentially a new distributor in Alberta. So we shall see there, and we continue to talk with other countries. I don't want to give away the ghost, but we have some irons in the fire, and we're just so excited to be spreading the Single Cask Nation love about.
Yep, Jess is working incredibly hard behind the scenes.
That she is.
Trying to get our whiskies out to more countries and by extension to more people. And it takes time, and we're building it.
Yep.
And she is building it.
That she is. Doing a damn fine job at it as well. So
Indeed. I think this concludes the news.
That does.
I think if a news segment can conclude with positive words about Jess, I think that's the right way to conclude the news segment.
I think you're right, Jason. I think you're right. Before we get out of here, Jason, because we have emails, but I don't want to bring them up in this episode because we're getting really close to our mailbag episode, which comes mid-February.
Looking forward to it, as always.
As always. What we're doing now, so we're going to hold off on emails until the mailbag episode. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let you know we're collecting questions, comments, what have you, for the mailbag episode. A deadline, should you want to get your question in for that episode, the deadline is the 30th of January. And if you wish to send us an email, you could do so, questions@onenationunderwhiskey.com. You could also send us private messages through Facebook. Just check out One Nation Under Whiskey. Check it out there. And you can always DM us on Twitter, but to be quite honest, it's Twitter. You don't need to be there. You really don't.
Best not to. There's also the direct messaging for One Nation Under Whiskey on Instagram, like Cameron used.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, if you want to put pen to paper, though having said that, the U.S. Postal Service is in friggin' shambles right now. But if you mail it now,
is the correct word.
if you put pen to paper and send your question off to One Nation Under Whiskey or J&J Spirits or Single Cask Nation to P.O. Box 335, Guilford, Connecticut. That's Guilford, Connecticut. CT is the state code. 06437. If you send it within the week, there's a good chance. And by the way, this is the week of December 14th. So there's a good chance that we may see it before January 30th, 2022. So
and it helps if you live in Connecticut to make that a reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I say a little shout out here for a very good friend and a very good listener of the podcast who took time to send in some treats for us.
Yeah, sorry, Jason, you can't.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. Cheerio. Our good friend Svi sent us some samples of some absolutely cracking whiskies. And there was a cheeky little full bottle in there as well, which was much appreciated. I responded to let him know he'd sent me a Linkwood. And I said, oh, my 10-year-old will be very happy, since that's my 10-year-old's favourite distillery. But the thing I wanted to say here before we get out is he sent us Glenfarclas 2009 from the Stillman's Dram. Mm-hmm. And what was striking to me, in sticking my nose into the sample, it smells just like standing in the Glenfarclas warehouse.
I know the exact smell you're talking about.
Just absolutely wonderful. And, you know, just as we're talking to Dave about place and people, sticking my nose in that glass transported me to that warehouse, but also thinking of the last time we saw George and we saw Callum, right? That I think is what Dave is talking about. That's the power of whiskey. That's what we're exploring with this wonderful, wonderful amber liquid. And so I just wanted to get that in there, and to thanks V for giving me that opportunity to be transported at this time.
Well, we need to also thank Danny Saltman. Right, because it was Danny Saltman who reached out to me, said, "What's your address and what's Jason's address? We got something we want to send out to you." And so he worked with Zvi, and here we are, a bit richer when it comes to owning whiskey. So we thank you.
So I got the Linkwood from DS Taman. What did you get?
I got the Kalila, so a 12-year-old Kalila. Hold on one second. Oh, I lost my headphones there. For people who aren't familiar, the bottler is called DS Taman, and they've released a Linkwood and a Kalila, and they've done 2 editions of that now. 2 editions that I'm aware of, at least. And they're bottled at 46% alcohol. And what's interesting about these is the entire line is kosher certified, and they're finishing the whiskey in Israeli wine casks. So this Kalila was finished in a flam wine cask, which is pretty cool. I remember tasting edition 1 with Danny back in New York, either earlier this year or late last year, and it was just delicious. And so to receive this in the mail was a damn treat.
It was, yeah, completely unexpected for me, but whenever 4 delicious samples and a bottle of Linkwood show up on your door, that's a good day.
Yeah, yep. You say yes, please, and thank you.
so thanks sincerely to those chaps, to Zvi, to Danny. Wonderful, really kind.
Yep, very kind. You know what? I don't think there's any note better than that, better than a note of thanks to get us out on.
We came, we saw, we conquered. In the next episode of One Nation Under Whiskey, you and I, Joshua, have the unenviable task of looking back on 2020 and saying happy, positive things.
There are plenty of happy, positive things that you and I can say. We are lucky. We're luckier than most.
Yep. Was like us, damn few in their odd deed.
Deed as in dead?
Yeah, burn breed.
Okay, yep, there we go.
Should we get out of here?
Yeah, let's get out of here.
Let's go make some latkes.
Oh, I love that. Chin chin. Oh, actually, I don't say that. What do I say? What do you say?
I'm going to say Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. Happy last night of Hanukkah to those who celebrate. Happy Kwanzaa to those who celebrate. Happy Festivus to those who celebrate. And happy whatever you find joy in to everybody else.
Merry Christmas, Kwanzaa.
Cheers, big ears.
That's my line. Cheers.
Up your nose with a rubber hose. Up your butt with a coconut. Chin chin.